Hey guys, welcome back to Poor Man Mods. I don't even remember what number we're on, but this is the 1UZ swap series. I don't know if we're 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes at this point. I totally forget. In this video, we actually buttoned up the car enough to go on its maiden voyage, learned a couple of things on that maiden voyage, and then refined some things. And then towards the end, Brad and I actually took it out and started to street tune it, but then something broke at the end, which kind of put the car a little bit further behind schedule. But I will show you guys that at the end of the video, so stay tuned. So I'm going to attempt to adjust the shaft on my master cylinder to get the clutch to work and hopefully the transmission to work. I tried to adjust it all the way out, but it was apparently already out, so I extended this clevis. I welded a nut onto it to give me some more length. We're going to put this back together to effectively lengthen that rod, and hopefully that will fix my clutch problem. Alrighty, I think we have improvement. The engine's running, and look what I can do now. Clutch in, first, second, third, fourth. I can go through the gears, put it in first, and it will catch and move me. So, yeah, transmission's now working. The master cylinder just needed adjusted, so let's get this thing buttoned up and take it for a drive. Alright, so this is very good. I pretty much eyeballed the clutch and got it feeling perfect. Steering wheel is way off center, obviously. And the transmission works. I think the 2 needs a little bit refinement, obviously, but it's running. Speed does not work, and my fuel gauge works, but the light doesn't, so I'll have to figure that out. But the car's driving. Okay, back from the first test drive. We finished the list to get it driving, which is that list, and now we need to refine it. And here are some things I want to work on. Alignment's on here, but that's very last thing. But I need to figure out the evap lines. I've got an open evap line under the hood and one under the car. Really need to figure out the speedo. And before I do any more driving, I really should finish the exhaust, get this mid pipe on, and get a bung welded in for the wideband so I can see the air to fuel ratio on this, and also get my water temp gauge working, whether that's the stock gauge or I did buy an altimeter water temp gauge somewhere down there. I think I'm going to delete this tablet here and put 2 or 3 gauges here, wideband, water temp, and oil pressure. That's the plan for now, so I'm going to start tackling these. Okay, I'm at least trying to get my AC system buttoned up so it's sealed and together. Worrying about it electronically later. I just replaced my condenser, so I have a fresh new one. And this is the IS300 low pressure hose. It does not work with the 1UZ, simply just will not fit. Some people said this SC430 line will work, so that's what I'm going to try. Just simply removed the IS300 line that connected back there. So we're going to see if that end will connect to the compressor right down here. Hopefully it does. Not sure if it'll require any bending, but that's what I ordered. It's for like a 2002 SC430. We'll see if it works. Without any modification, I don't think this is going to work. You can see how it's going to go right into the engine, so I'm going to try to bend this that way and see if that'll make it fit any better. Well, apparently you can just twist it. Okay. So I was able to get a little bit of twist out of it. It wasn't like welded or anything, so maybe that'll help. That looks like it should work much better. We'll give it a try. I have the SC430 line connected and secured to the compressor, but it's a bit a ways from there. I'm going to see if bending it will help us get there. Yes, I got it. So you got to twist that in a little bit up there. Bolt this section on first down here at the compressor, and bend it until it reaches. It's tight. Oh, it's tight, but it works. Alright guys, check this out. I removed my tablet, which previously I removed the factory navigation and installed my tablet here, but I removed my tablet. I 3D printed a triple gauge pod. It's not the most elegant design, but it works. I got my AEM wideband, altimeter water temperature, and AEM oil pressure. So the gauges are working. At idle, I am running extremely rich right now. It's like 10 AFR at idle. Oil pressure is pretty good at 75. Temperature is pretty good. My fan's kicked on at 190 degrees on the gauge. And in my Spectronics somewhere here, my computer, the setting for the fan is like 186 degrees. So water temperature gauge is working pretty good. I'll show you where I plumbed in my oil pressure and water temperature gauge. For the wideband, I ran the wire down here. It's going to go through the shift boot. I will eventually clean it all up and make it nice and tidy. For the other two gauges, I ran all the wires down here. Got all my power sources from in here. I'm not going to show you exactly what I did because YouTube and wiring, you're wrong no matter what you do. So for the sensors, I ran the wires through the firewall into the engine bay. I ran the wires through that grommet or over that grommet into the engine bay. I still plan on getting my factory ECU box here to make this look nicer. But for the temperature gauge, as you can see, I changed this radiator hose. I got some nice blue silicone piping, and I put this temperature sensor T in my radiator hose because there isn't really a good place in the block to probe this. The sensor that came with my gauge is an 1/8 inch MPT, and I don't think there's any 1/8 inch MPT stuff on this engine. So this is a pretty cheap and easy solution. One thing you have to keep in mind, you have to run the wire from the gauge to the sensor. But then if you're doing this kind of setup, you need to ground it. If you have this in the radiator hose, there's actually no ground. So then this piece that I bought came with a bolt and a threaded section for me to connect a wire to, and I ran it around here and grounded it here. So this is now grounded and the sensor works. For my oil pressure gauge, I got a pretty cool barb. It went into my oil lines that ran to my remote oil filter over there. And that also gave me an 1/8 inch MPT fitting for my oil pressure sensor. So now I got oil pressure and coolant temp. Very cool. And I also put a breather on my valve cover over here. This section here, this breather is basically an intake for the PCV system. So you can either put a filter there or plumb it to your intake. It just needs to get filtered air. I'm trying to get this interior back together. And because the transmission moved forward like an inch or two, the shifter surround, I had to remove this metal piece. It just was not working. So I was able to use the rubber boot, but I had to get rid of this. It just wasn't working with the cube shifter. And I'll probably fill that hole with duct tape or something to try to seal it up at a later date. But now I just want to get this interior back together so I can drive it. So I do have an ABS light on the dash because I deleted ABS. This should fix my problem. This may have been the tightest fuse in the world. I just ripped it out, the plastic piece, but the fuse itself stayed in there. Jeez. But now it's not connected. I'll see if I still have an ABS light. Still got a light on the dash. I guess I'll just pull the bulb. So I'm having a high idle issue. I'm trying to get the idle better. Whenever I decrease fuel, my idle goes up. It's set to 800, but because this is drive-by cable, you can't really control the idle. But every time I lower fuel, RPM goes up. As you can see, it was at 1500 RPM when I get the air-to-fuel ratio right. It idles great at 800 RPM, but when it's pig rich. So this throttle body is all the way forward. The cable's not loose, but in here, there is a bit of movement in that throttle plate, and I had it idling and I would close it, and the idle would drop. So I might take this back apart and see if there's any tweaking I can do with that to get it a little bit more closed. Okay, so I'm going to try this. I believe this here is the idle screw. So watch what happens when I turn this in. A lot of play in the throttle body. Move it out. even less. So I'm gonna see if I can fine tune the idle with this bad boy. All right. Yeah, I didn't even look up how to adjust the idle on this thing. I just saw this screw and messed with it and saw that it moved the throttle body a little bit. And I just had the idle pretty good, around 900 RPM, and the AFR was good. I'm gonna turn it back on and see how it idles. But all I did was loosen up that jam nut and loosen this screw a little bit, and that changed the idle. I'm pretty happy with this. The idle isn't perfect when it first starts up. It's a little unhappy, but hard to see with the camera, but 14.5, 14.7 AFR, idle is right around 1,000. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good for getting this thing just running down the road so I can get it to a tuner. So to fix my ABS light issue, I'm just going to pull the bulb, and I believe it's that one right here. I'm also going to see if I can remove or cover up that fuel light bulb right here that keeps blinking. Not sure if I can remove that one, but you can easily remove the ABS bulb right here. And we can remove the fuel warning light. You can see right there, it's labeled, so pretty simple. Twist it and pull it out, and no more blinking light on the dash. Awesome. And while you're in here, if you want, you could also remove like the traction light and other lights that are just completely obsolete now, which I might do. They might not light up, but they're just obsolete. Okay, check this out. Was there ever a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive IS300? Look at that. That indicator bulb right there is for cruise or four-wheel drive. Or was this same cluster used in another like Lexus model? I am very intrigued about that. All right, that's much better. No ABS light, no warning light. So right here I have an evap hose. This went to the intake manifold, and it runs down to underneath the car, connects to a plastic hard line near the fuel lines. There was another line that went over and connected to the airbox. Well, since we did away with the factory ECU, that system will no longer work. So I'm just going to remove the rubber lines and let the hard plastic lines be open underneath the car. Since the system isn't working, it shouldn't matter, but this frees up some space in the bay. All right, everybody, I have Brad with me, and we are attempting to street tune this thing. He has been working on the Spitronics. Basically, we are just babying this thing, driving it down the road, checking the wideband, and then adjusting the cells accordingly. Pretty much this whole map was set up clean, except for the idle. Got the idle clean up, and then we've been taking it for a drive. I just go steady, and Brad looks at the wideband and adjusts accordingly, and both of us pretty much have zero tuning experience, but we're actually getting it pretty good. Idle's good. AFR's good at idle. That's decent for now. And yeah, we're just going step by step, building this map up. Oh man, this sucks. It's like this motor wasn't designed to be in this car or something. After Brad and I were doing a little bit of tuning on the street, I noticed my lights were dimming and looked at my voltage, and the alternator wasn't charging. Did a little bit of troubleshooting. All my wiring seems okay, but the alternator isn't charging, so I'm yanking it off, take it to the store to get it tested. Well, to get the alternator out of this car now, you have to remove the power steering pump, because the alternator, when you slide it forward, will hit the power steering pump. And then I had to move my oil filter, and then I also had to drop the sway bar. It was getting stuck between the fans and the sway bar, so I had to undo the sway bar from the bushing brackets. Now it's finally out, and I can get it tested. I'm hoping, since I went through all this trouble, that this is the problem. Bastard. So, yeah, I'm in the Supra, and we just got back from Advance Auto for testing the alternator, and sure enough, this bad boy failed. Now, I should have listened to Tony. Should have listened. When I was rebuilding the engine, he told me I should rebuild or replace that alternator. I did do that with the starter, because the starter's underneath the intake manifold, and I was like, there's no way in hell I'm taking any chance, and I'm going to take that intake manifold back off to replace the starter if it fails. So I rebuilt the starter. But I did check the alternator. I took it to Advance Auto, had them check it, and it checked out fine. I took it apart and painted it, and it looks nice. It looks nice and silver. And yeah, Brad and I put about 20 miles on the car last night, maybe a little bit more than that, street tuning it. And then towards the end, the alternator cut out. It stopped charging. And ripped the alternator out of the IS300 today, and kind of a pain that was. It's weird. It's like that motor isn't designed to fit in that car. So to get an alternator out of a 1UZ that's in an IS300, you have to take off the power steering pump, and you have to drop the sway bar. So, bit of a pain, but not the end of the world, I guess. It failed so bad, the machine was like, "Are you sure there's an alternator connected?" We tested it again, and it was like, "Yeah, I'm not seeing an alternator connected to this thing." So, it's toast. I'm going to take it to a local guy who rebuilds alternators and starters, because a new Denso one is not cheap, and that's an OEM Toyota one. So, I'm going to take it to him. He'll rebuild it for probably $100, but that'll push me back, I don't know, maybe a week. So the car's going to be sitting at this point, but we are very close to being able to like legit drive this thing. Brad and I got the tune really good last night for cruising. I'm having an issue with the idle. It doesn't want to save some of my settings to get the idle right, which I'm very frustrated with that, but we got it cruising pretty good, and we were doing like light power pulls, and it was feeling pretty good. So I'm hoping in the next video we'll be able to in-depth show you what we've done tune-wise. Now, we're not professional tuners, but I'll show you what we've done and what we've learned, and then maybe even have my map, maybe even have my map file on a Google Drive to where you can download it too and see how it makes your car drive. Now, use it at your own discretion, but it might be a good starting point if you can use my map. So maybe that'll help you guys out. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one, whenever that is. See ya.